There are similarities between this case and the case that I recently covered of Ashley Fallis, as both cases involve the spouse of a law enforcement officer, and the death may or may not be a suicide. There is an argument that anyone involved with law enforcement may be better at creating a convincing suicide scene, and a more contentious argument that when a law enforcement officer is accused, then the authorities may close ranks to protect one of their own. But before I get drawn into either argument, let's just jump into the case and you guys can decide for yourselves. This is the very troubling death of Kendy Howard, and this is Murderous Crows. Kendy Ann Wilkins was born in Orofino, Idaho on April the 30th, 1972, to Janie and Wendell Wilkins. And she also had a brother, Brian. The family lived in Kamaya, Idaho until Kendy was 4 years old, before the family moved to Lewiston in Idaho. And Lewiston was where Kendy started school. And while there, she did childhood things like playing with Barbie dolls, taking dance classes. She was an avid singer in the bath, giving the family a concert every night. She was on a youth track team, raced in a motorcycle class at several local tracks, and made many lifelong friends before moving to Kamaya in the 5th grade. Kendy immediately loved Kamaya when she met her best friend, Poppy Nogo. Strange name, but that's because Poppy was her first horse. Kendy, as a horse rider, was competitive and loved going to gymkhanas and rodeos. But when Kendy reached high school, she didn't have enough time to continue going to events every weekend, so reluctantly had to give up riding. It was also while she was in high school that she started working in the restaurant industry. She was on the original crew when the pizza factory chain came to town. But Kendy eventually left the pizza factory and went to work at Gilinda's Cafe, where she worked with her mother and her brother. Kendy was amazing in this hospitality field. Her bubbly personality, her ability to make everyone feel as if they were her friend, and, well, she was easy on the eyes, meaning that she had another plus point in helping her become a great waitress. Her ability to handle the stress of heavy order times like breakfast and dinner made her a valuable employee. After leaving high school, Kendy had her daughter Brooke with Jim Forsman. And later in life she married Dan Howard, and they had a son named Wyatt. They moved to Lewiston, then on to Powell, before finally settling in Atoll. Kendy worked at Kootenai Health and was well known for her bright smile and outgoing personality. She spent many years as a 4-H leader, helping kids with multiple projects. She loved the outdoors, attending concerts, enjoying her many friendships, and, most importantly perhaps, a good brewery. And in 2012, she became a grandmother. By the 2020s, she had been married to Dan Howard for over 2 decades, and all seemed to be well in her world. Certainly from the outside looking in, Kendy seemed content and settled in her life. And this made it all the more unexpected when a frantic 911 call came in on February the 2nd, 2021.
911. Take a breath for me. I need you to make sure I got it right. Okay? 3, 2, 6, 7. Okay. All right. Take a really big breath for me. In through your nose and out through your mouth. Okay? All right. Come on, Dan. I can't understand you. Okay? All right. Downstairs, nice and to the bedroom, okay? Okay, Dan, I need you to go down to the front door.
The body cam captured by the police on arrival at the home showed what greeted the police when they arrived.
No! Damn it! Oh my God! No,
Dan, I know this is hard, but when is the last time that you saw your wife alive?
Dan, do you want medical to look at you at all?
No.
Okay.
Secure the scene, don't touch anything.
Kendy was discovered lifeless, submerged in her bathtub with her pistol resting at the bottom. Initial investigations deemed the incident a suicide. But as detectives began to dig a bit deeper, they found elements of Kendy's death that raised eyebrows. Kendy was 49 years old at the time of her death and had been married to Dan, who was then 55, for 26 years. They lived on a 10-acre plot, and they had established what seemed to be content lives, highlighted by their success in real estate and the shared parenting of their son, Wyatt. But beneath the surface, as we always say, tensions between the couple were festering. Just days before her death, Kendy had confided to friends her intention to divorce Dan, detailing how their marriage had become strained, and this strain was exacerbated by Dan's demanding work schedule as he transitioned to the Alaskan oil fields. She had expressed frustration and loneliness, feelings compounded by Dan's past, which included the emotional fallout from his involvement in another shooting years before. Witnesses explained how, during this time, certainly from the outside, Kendy was sprightly and engaging, and was a woman who loved life. Yet by early 2021, she was planning her exit from her marriage, going so far as to even prepare to buy her own home. But she never got the chance to start again somewhere else. On the evening that Dan called 911 for help, it was noted by Kootenai County Sheriff's Deputy Miranda Thomas, who was one of the first responders, how Dan was visibly upset, yet it somewhat came across as something of a performance, with her saying he would scream and yell, but there were no tears. First responders found Kendy's body naked, covered only by the water from the bathtub. Upon investigation, detectives discovered that the gunshot wound was not accompanied by the expected blood spatter, which in turn led them to question the details surrounding the case. Among other strange aspects noted was the packed bag at the bottom of the stairs that was filled with women's clothing, suggesting someone, that being Kendy, possibly preparing to leave. Also spotted were wet towels behind the bathroom door. And more intriguingly, the clothes dryer was running. According to the timer on the cycle of the dryer, there were only 6 minutes left. But the 911 call had only come minutes earlier. So who would have started the cycle when the house had apparently been in chaos for some time? He asked rhetorically. Given Kendy's apparent plans to separate from him, suspicion obviously then soon turned to him, as investigators aligned the inconsistencies against his account of the event. After 2 years, Dan was arrested and charged with his wife's murder. It was alleged that he had used his skills from police training to execute the crime and to stage the scene to resemble suicide. Brooke Wilkins, who was Kendy's daughter and Dan Howard's stepdaughter, was central in pushing for Dan to be investigated, as she believed Dan was abusive towards Kendy, and as she had witnessed some of his behaviour, she believed he was certainly capable of something like this. Dan was the only real suspect, other than it being a suicide, and as more evidence was found and more investigations were undertaken, police believed that Daniel Howard murdered his wife because she was planning to leave him for another man, and he did not want to split $2 million in shared assets with her in a divorce. Three days before she died, Kendy Howard reportedly woke in the middle of the night to her husband standing over her, dressed in black. Maybe he was the milk tray man delivering some chocolates. Kids, ask your parents. She went to stay with her parents, afraid for her life, and understandably so. But Daniel Howard lured her back home with promises that he loved her and wouldn't harm her. Isn't that what they always say? Looking at her body following her death was also extremely enlightening. And it was discovered that before she died, Kendy Howard sustained bruises all over her body, shallow cuts on her feet, a large second-degree burn, and a broken jaw. Taken together, this painted a rather vivid picture of a violent struggle with Daniel Howard. When the prosecutors had all their ducks in a row, as they say, the case moved to trial, and that trial started on March the 4th of this year, 2024.
Right now, a former Idaho State Police trooper from Athol is on trial for allegedly killing his wife 3 years ago. He claims she killed herself, and he found her in the bathtub. Well, today, Kootenai County jurors watched body camera video from the night of Kendy Howard's death. KREM 2's Amanda Rowley has more.
Prosecutors today presented several pieces of evidence from the night of Kendy Howard's death, including body camera video from responding deputies and the 911 call made by the suspect, Daniel Howard.
Using body camera video from the crime scene, prosecutors appear to focus on Daniel Howard's behavior.
What's going on? Sir, they have to do their job.
And point out what investigators thought was suspicious.
There appear to be deodorant marks on his shirt.
And why did that get your attention?
Because by that time it was almost midnight. And most people, if you put your clothes on in the morning and get deodorant on them, it's gone by midnight.
Each deputy who testified today all said they made several unusual observations, including a Victoria's Secret bag packed with women's clothes, small fragments of glass on the bedroom floor, and the dryer was running with bath towels and rugs. The deputy coroner says she found the position of Kendy's body in the bathtub unusual and noted some inconsistencies.
It's a strange position for somebody's feet to be in a bathtub. The blood on her face is not going in a proper direction.
Did that appear odd to you based on your training and experience?
Yes.
Jurors also heard the 911 call Howard made to report his wife's death.
Yeah, I need you to take a deep breath, okay?
But then prosecutors repeatedly asked responding deputies if they saw any tears.
At no point did I observe any tears throughout the night.
Body camera video also showed a deputy trying to piece together a timeline of that night, including when Howard called 911.
I didn't think it was a gunshot. I was downstairs, maybe going. It sounded like something hit the floor or something, I don't know.
So far, this has been the most difficult day in court, not only because of the evidence we're sharing, but the prosecutors also presented some gruesome photos of Kendy's body at the crime scene.
And the prosecution's narrative was chilling, alleging that Dan had put Kendy in a carotid restraint maneuver, or a sleeper hold if you watch your wrestling, before finally shooting her, while the defense pushed back, maintaining that the notion of suicide was absolutely feasible. As the trial progressed, the likelihood of a suicide, despite the best efforts of the defense team, started to seem less and less likely. After killing Kendy Howard, prosecutors said, her husband removed her clothes. He carried her body into the bathroom, placed her in the bathtub and filled it with water. He pulled her hair back with a clip, although some strands did escape, and falling across her face. He set her phone and purse by the sink. At some point, Daniel Howard put a gun in Kendy Howard's mouth and pulled the trigger. But the bullet's downward trajectory later revealed that she could not have shot herself. The prosecution also revealed that Daniel Howard's actions mirrored those of a decade previously, when he threatened to kill a man who allegedly had an affair with his wife. Dan Howard was accused of stalking the man, stealing his mail, pouring syrup in his vehicles, and firing a gun at his house. How very mature of you, Dan. At that time, Daniel Howard reportedly told investigators that the other man lived only because he allowed it. And he said he understood why some men kill their wives. So this was clearly a man with a noted history of cockwombleness. Ultimately, the jury didn't buy the defense case of this being self-defense and decided otherwise. After 10 days of testimony and some 62 witnesses, Dan Howard was found guilty of second-degree murder and domestic battery on March the 19th, 2024.
The jury in Idaho has reached a verdict in the jealous ex-trooper murder trial in Idaho. The jury deliberated for 8 hours, 19 minutes. There you see the judge, Daniel Howard, accused of killing his wife, Kendy, back in 2021, but he claimed it was suicide. We are going to take you in live now because it seems that the judge is standing. They usually stand as the jury enters, which means this verdict is on its way, folks. Let's listen in.
You may be seated. Members of the jury, I'll ask you to speak through your foreperson. Who is that? All right. Have you in fact reached the verdict?
Yes, we have.
All right. If you would hand the verdict form to my bailiff, please. Mr. Howard, if you'd please rise. The clerk will read the jury's verdict.
In the District Court of the 1st Judicial District of the State of Idaho, in and for the County of Kootenai, State of Idaho versus Daniel C. Howard, we, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn to the above entitled action for our verdict, unanimously answer the questions submitted to us as follows. Count 1, is the defendant Daniel C. Howard guilty or not guilty of domestic battery? Guilty. Count 2, is the defendant Daniel C. Howard guilty or not guilty of murder in the first degree? Not guilty. Is the defendant Daniel Howard guilty or not guilty of second degree murder? Guilty.
Before receiving his sentence, Daniel Howard professed his innocence to the court. He said he loves and misses his wife and still loves Kendy Howard's family, including her daughter, with him saying, "I'm not the monster people have portrayed me to be." He asked the judge to consider his military and law enforcement services, as well as his volunteer work in the community, with him also saying, "I stand before you a shell of the man I used to be. Hell, I don't even have a shell left." Well, bless his fragile cockwomble heart. In summarizing, Judge Lamont Barash said Daniel Howard committed a heinous, outrageous murder that justified a life sentence. When Daniel Howard killed his wife, according to the judge, he killed more than his wife. He also killed a loving mother, grandmother, sister, daughter, and friend, with him saying, "You killed somebody who brought a lot of life and light to those around her. You snuffed that out because of your own pride and greed. He also went on to say that based on his history, Daniel Howard shows little possibility of rehabilitation. He said society must be protected from Daniel Howard, and that Kendy Howard's family deserves the closure of a life sentence without the possibility of parole.
Howard's going to die in prison.
Well, good evening and thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News at 6. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
And I'm Whitney Ward. A jury convicted Daniel Howard of second-degree murder and domestic battery back in March. KREM 2's Amanda Rowley was inside the courtroom today for the sentencing and is bringing us more tonight.
Kootenai County prosecutors say a second-degree murder conviction doesn't always lead to a life sentence, but that's exactly what happened in this courtroom today, all because the judge wanted to send a very clear message that this crime will not be tolerated.
Jealousy and greed. These are what prosecutors and the judge say motivated Daniel Howard to kill his wife Kendy and stage her death as a suicide.
You can take from the evidence that she fought for her life.
Howard took Kendy's life 3 years ago, and now he will spend the rest of his in prison.
Despite your efforts at the time to appear emotional and sad and distraught, it's clear to me that you're a remorseless killer.
Kendy's family told the judge they are haunted by what they could have done to protect her.
I struggle with guilt and I struggle with not knowing. I wish I could have convinced her to stay with me instead of going home that night. The fear on her face and in her voice when she told me about how she woke up with him standing over her will never leave me.
Kendy's daughter, Brooke Wilkins, says her mother never let anything get her down. That's why it's become important to her to keep a positive outlook going forward.
Nothing will fill the hole he has created. Nothing can fix or undo what he has done. But her name can be free. The thought that he can no longer have control over her name, her memory, and her spirit gives me a sense of peace.
Howard insists he is innocent and told the judge he loved his wife.
I'm not that monster, I assure you, that people portrayed me to be.
My office clearly feels otherwise we wouldn't have charged it.
Kootenai County Prosecutor Stanley Mortensen considers the life sentence the best possible outcome, one that Kendy's parents are happy with as well.
It's not going to bring her back, but we're relieved and that he's not going to be released and be out there to hurt somebody else.
Howard now has 42 days to file an appeal. At this time, it's not clear if that's something he's going to pursue. Reporting in Coeur d'Alene, Amanda Rowley, KREM 2.
The judge closed his statements by saying, "You are not beyond redemption, but in this case, it will have to happen within the walls of a prison." So there we have the case of a controlling and egocentric man. Sorry, I didn't mean man, I meant cockwomble. Who thought that his experience in law enforcement meant that he could stage the perfect suicide scene. But like many narcissists, he wasn't actually the smartest man in the room. And although it took some time for all of the pieces to come together, he was finally made to face justice and pay the price for being a cruel and nasty bastard. Brooke Wilkins, Kendy's daughter, stated in court in a passionate statement directed at Dan Howard, "You'll never understand the damage you have caused to all of us. You are not the victim. You deserve to be here today. You deserve to never again live a free life. And Brooke also described her family's grief and the toll that her mother's murder had taken, with her saying, "She won't see me get married. She won't see my daughter grow up. She didn't see me finally get it together." Kendy Howard was a lovely, warm and generous person, stuck in a loveless situation and looking for a way out. Kendy was survived by her parents, Janie and Wendell Wilkins, her children Brooke Wilkins and Wyatt Howard, her granddaughter Kenley Wilkins, her brother Brian Wilkins, and countless friends and relatives. To quote from her obituary, "She was loved dearly by her family, and we cannot express how much we will miss her. I send my love and deepest condolences to the friends and family of Kendy Howard, and this video is unquestionably dedicated to her." Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. Don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything, but it really helps me out. But with that said, I'm Steve. This lap thing is Samson. And we will see you when we see you.
Say that you're ready, but you won't like it, you say